Hi, I'm EHoltzclaw, author of Laddering, Unlocking the Potential of Consumer Behavior, and I'm an expert at why customers buy. And I'm passionate about working with companies small and large to help them truly understand their customers better so they can establish authentic relationships and create successful products, services, and marketing messages. This passion is the reason that I wrote the book, Laddering. I wanted to share the lessons I learned over a decade of talking to customers one-on-one and teach others the techniques they need to better understand their customers. I realized that writing a book still wasn't enough. That's why I decided to create this training series, so I could reach as many people as possible and answer as many questions as possible. If you've been subscribed to my Wednesday Answer, hopefully you found some value in those, and you'll find equal value in the training that you're about to receive. Today I'm going to cover three things. What is laddering, and why is it so important? What mistakes do most companies make that you don't have to? And why are demographics and segmentation an old way of looking at your customers that shouldn't be considered any longer? So let's get started. What is laddering? Well, laddering is a technique that was created back in the 1980s, and I sort of hijacked it for my book because it made a lot of sense to understand who our consumers are and what's important to them. So let me give you an example of how laddering would work. Back when products were mass-produced, when you could only create certain types of items and you had to create them in the millions, a product would end up on a marketer's desk. And the marketer had to decide, how am I going to sell this to everyone? So they would take that product out and they would talk to their customers about what they cared about and the features and functions that were important to them. Now, to give you a concrete example, think about a stereo system. Stereo systems have several components to them, and back in the olden days they used to have CD changers. If we were showing the stereo system to a group of consumers, what we'd have them do is break down the features that were important to them from least to most. And once they identified the most important feature, we would ask them the question why 5 times. We would take them deeper into the features that are really important to them about that stereo system. And what you would find, especially around a topic like a stereo system, is that it's really not about the CD changer. It's about how the CD changer makes them look when their friends come over for a party. What people like about a stereo system that has a CD changer in it is that they can pretend to be a DJ. So while they're entertaining their friends, everyone in the background is listening to the music that they've pre-selected. Their most important value for the stereo system is actually the CD changer. So if I'm a marketer, instead of talking about those features and functions, what I would do is say, look cool at your next party. Buy our stereo system so that you can play music in the background and it can be the selections that you want and you don't have to do anything. That's how I would sell the product in the good old days. What happened is we've moved to a consumer-based economy. And because of that, we now need to understand what's really and truly important to the consumer. What drives them to make a purchase, to react to a message, or to include a product or service in their environment. So we take the laddering technique, and instead of looking at the products that we can build, we look at the consumers who will buy those products. And we start to understand what are the core drivers behind that person. What do they really care about in their life? And we want to start building products and services that fall within areas of unmet needs or in areas of things that they aspire to be. So laddering is taking an old school technique that used to be used to sell mass-produced products in which you could not control the variety of what the product was and applying it to the consumers that you really want to sell the product or service to and understanding what's important to that consumer and resonating to their core values. So why is laddering important? It's important because the marketing messages, products, and services that you build can't appeal to a mass audience. They have to appeal to niches, niche markets of people who care about different things. And you need to understand what those markets look like and how they work. Let me give you an example. I was working with a bank a couple of years ago, and they wanted to build a new website. And all bank websites are typically crafted around life stages. So are you about to retire? Are you going to college? Have you just gotten married? And the bank planned on building their website the same way. So we went out and did laddering exercises with their customers to understand what was really important to those customers. And the word convenience kept coming up over and over again. Now, if they'd followed the old school way of doing marketing, they would have said, we have the most convenient way for you to save for college. We conveniently allow you to combine your banking accounts once you get married, or we conveniently help you retire. But what we had to do was get up underneath that word to really understand what was important to these customer groups. The word convenience actually meant 3 things to 3 distinct groups. To one group, convenience meant ATMs and locations. So if they moved to a new area, they would also change their bank because they wanted to make sure they could go to an ATM and withdraw money, or they could go to a bank and deposit their paycheck. To another group, convenience meant online tools. If you wanted to move that group across, you would need to create the best online tools that were easy for them to use and easy for them to adopt, but hard for them to move away from. And for a third group, they had very complex finances. These were people that had either inherited money or they had a small business, and they wanted to work with a personal banker, someone that knew them by name when they called in and heard their voice. They didn't want to worry about the ATMs and the locations, and they often never signed into the online tools. So instead of putting messaging up about life stage, this bank built a website around those three things, and they were able to really resonate with their customers and think about what was important to them in the context of banking. So what's one mistake that most companies make when they start looking at their customers to understand how to build products, marketing messages, and services for them? Well, the thing they do is they look for numbers. They want large numbers because they want to send out a mass media message that will hit a number of people. And we're really in a mass customization world, so they need to think about the niches that they're starting to go after. To give you an example, I was working with a customer who wanted to mix two topics together because they didn't have enough people for that topic. Those two topics were prosumer photography and video games. The reason this customer had decided to mix the groups of prosumer photography and video games is they didn't feel like they had enough numbers if those groups were divided. But the problem is, a prosumer photographer doesn't want to hear messages about video games, and a video game person may not care at all about prosumer photography. Much better to send the right message to the right person at the right time instead of thinking about how you can send a mass message out to everyone else. Companies have to decouple themselves and start thinking about how they can create products and services that fit to their customers, not their own internal initiatives and their business objectives. The third thing I want to talk to you about is why traditional demographics, age, income, where you live, whether you're married or not, and if you have kids, and how those things are segmented down into groups doesn't matter any longer. We have to stop looking at that type of information to create products and services, and especially to create advertising messages. To give you an example, I was working with a company several years ago, and they told me that everyone that bought from them was a baby boomer woman. It was a cruise line, and the reason they had made that decision is they went through their big data, and everyone who actually bought the cruise was associated to a credit card that was a baby boomer woman. And so what they wanted to do was build a website for baby boomer women. Now, if you think about the baby boomer woman, she is interested in certain things, or at least that's what they thought. Time of her life, being an empty nester, and having new experiences, and potentially hot flashes. So we went out and we did a study, and what we found out is none of those things were really important to a baby boomer woman in the context of cruising. And in fact, we learned that it wasn't necessarily the baby boomer woman who was making the decision about cruises. What we found actually mattered to cruisers is three different things. One, there were people who like to take cruise ships because they like to party. They go to the same location every year, the same week, with a group of friends, and they spend time in the casinos and the discos and on board the ship. Often, they don't even get off the ship when it goes into dock. There was another group that cared all about the destination. They really only saw the cruise ship as a motel room that they could stay in at night. They cared about locations like the Galapagos or going to Alaska. And then there was a third group who enjoyed leisure. They took the cruise ship for the spa facilities and the fact that there was a large lounge chair to cruiser ratio. They wanted the people on board to know them by the second day and be able to bring them a drink on demand. Those are three different factors, and they have nothing to do with being a baby boomer woman. So the website and the marketing materials that we built for them centered around those three messages, and that was the way that they could attract people in and understand from the beginning what they really cared about and what was important to them. As you can see, demographics and segmentation don't matter in this example at all. It doesn't matter how much money I make, it doesn't matter my age or my life stage. What matters is if I cruise because I like to party, if I cruise because of the destination, or if I cruise because I want to relax and have a leisurely time. Thank you for listening to the first training. Hopefully you learned what laddering is, what types of mistakes companies make when they try to build products and services, and some information about why demographics and segmentation are no longer important. Check your email in the next couple of days for the second training, and feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or over email. And if you're not signed up for my Wednesday answer, please go to my website and do so. Until next time.